Hi there, it's Carl Irwin, the Common Magician, and I've got something interesting to show you. We're going to try a one coin routine. That's a routine using just one coin. In fact, I'll take this one right here. There's my one coin that we're going to use. A lot of interesting things you can do with a single coin. I can take it here, I can throw it in the air, I can reach out and grab it when it lands, and there it is. Again, it's just one coin, only one coin in play. If I squeeze it, it's gone, completely gone, nowhere to be found. But if we look back where it disappeared, we might find it again. There it is. A lot of interesting things you can do with just a single coin that are very magical. If we squeeze it down really, really tight, we can make it so small you can't see it. But if we release, it will expand right back to its original size. Again, a lot of things that you can do with just one coin. Let me try something else. If I take a pen, got a pen down here, and I shove it right through the middle. Gone. That's a one coin routine. So a couple things about this. This is simple stuff, really simple stuff. And I'm sure my performance is not absolutely fantastic for those of you that are connoisseurs of coin magic. But it doesn't prevent me from doing coin magic. And I want to apply this thought process here I'm going to talk about to a list that David at Magicorthodoxy just put out today. Great video. He talks about 6 things that you can do to be a better magician, particularly if you're just starting out. And it's such a great list. It's all stuff you've all heard before and it's been talked about before. I wanted to expand upon some of the things that he discusses, though. So his list, real quick, is number 1, practice. Number 2, don't rush. Number 3, less is more. Number 4, perform. Make sure you're performing. Number 5, don't worry about nerves. Don't worry. Don't have anxiety, or rather, don't worry about your anxiety, I think is the bigger point, because you really can't avoid the anxiety, but don't worry about the nerves. And then number 6 is be yourself. So I want to talk about this list because it's such a fascinating list, and it actually has, I believe, it has a domino relationship. Each one of these elements actually depends upon other elements in the list in a lot of different ways. So let's just go through it and discuss this and how this applies to this. Again, I'm not a coin magician. That's not something I do. I don't do a lot of coin magic, but I do a little. And what I showed you there, as far as a real single coin kind of routine, that's the stuff I do. I really don't do a lot more than that. I did a coin routine on here recently where I showed you a handling of the wild coin David Roth kind of effect with a different handling that's more common magician-y. And I'll get to that in a minute. How does being the common magician fit into this list? Because I think it does. Other than what you just saw, I don't do a lot of stuff. I carry a gaff all the time, a super triple coin, and I have a simple routine I do with that's fairly low risk. It's pretty visual. It's got just enough material in it. And it's really all the material I need, which addresses a point on the list. I don't really need to do a whole lot more than that, but very accessible stuff. And let's relate this to the list. So number 1, practice. Obviously, this is a top issue. You need to practice. You need to practice. You need to practice. You need to practice. I've as a performer in music, I was in a group, a drum and bugle corps, and it's one of the very best ones in the world that I was a member of, an internationally recognized performing group, and we would perform. It was the Bluecoats Drum and Bugle Corps, if you even follow that kind of niche subculture. We performed in front of tens of thousands of people in a given show. It was a massive audience, and sometimes on television, on either recorded for network television or a live broadcast. And we had a saying. We had a very dark kind of saying about learning performance. And that is that you needed to know the show so well that if you died, if you were struck dead in the middle of the performance, your corpse would finish the show. That's how well you needed to know it. And I think another way to think about this is that material really should be known so well that it needs to become boring to you. This is true of any kind of performing environment. If it hasn't been made boring and so far beneath your capability in terms of execution, you probably don't know it well enough to really do it for people. Why is that important? Well, there is, first of all, there's a statistic. The statistic is that about 90% of all statistics are made up on the spot. This is one of those, okay? No, the real statistic is that people that perform, whenever you go to perform either a performance kind of activity, whether it's arts performance or even sports performance, most people will perform at like 80% of their real capability once they get in front of people. And this is the first domino relationship. The reason why that is has to do with number 5. Don't worry. You're going to have nerves. You're going to have concerns. It's inevitable. You can't get away from it. It doesn't matter how much you perform. That is always going to be there. The best way to defeat nerves is to accept that they exist and realize that they will always be present in the moment of performance. And the sooner you accept that, the better it is and easier it is to manage with them in a way. But because of that, because of those anxieties, unless you really hit that zone, and you can never really know when you're going to do it, you're probably going to perform at less than record-breaking level. Right? Someone who swims in the Olympics and breaks a pool record in competition, the fact of the matter is that they've probably broken that record in practice already several times over. The key is doing it in the moment of competition. That's why those records exist, because there's a competition element that is very hard to defeat. The nerves that exist there, the things that are getting in your way, the anxiety of having to do things right in high-profile situations are going to bring your capability down a little bit. You need to practice. You need to know it so that it is truly second nature. Okay, that's a domino relationship to other elements, to number 5, also to number 4 in terms of getting out there and performing and being comfortable with the performance environment, which is a domino relationship to number 5. Being yourself, you can't really be yourself unless you've practiced well enough so that you can worry more about your personality, your persona, and your delivery, right? You can't eliminate number 2, this rushing element, unless you've really practiced it. So, number 1, practice, and that's a relationship. Number 2, don't rush. Don't rush. Why do you rush? Well, it's a relationship to number 1 and number 5 again, and to number 4, which relies on number 5, right? This domino relationship. You rush because of anxiety. You rush because of anxiety. You're worried about it. David mentioned about rushing to get to the end, to get to the effect. I think there's some element to that. But in general, my experience in performance and with other people and teaching people performance, particularly in music, because that's what I am as a music teacher, is that people rush because of their anxiety. And this is a physiological element. When you go to perform, your blood pressure goes up. It just does. You can't get around that. Your blood pressure goes up. A lot of people that perform in music professionally, they'll actually be on beta blockers. They'll get some prescription medication, which is really just blood pressure medicine, in order to keep them a little chill, right, whenever they have to go. Now, I don't recommend that. I don't recommend that at all for performances. I don't do that personally. I think it's better to just know your material as well as you possibly can, so it's even better than second nature, making sure that you're exposed and performing at some levels. We'll get to number 3, less is more. I think that has a lot to do with it too. But you have to make sure that the anxiety is well enough in check. And one thing that can actually help defeat anxiety is to slow down. If you slow down, you become a little bit more thoughtful. Your mind becomes a little bit more clear. You get more accurate, more articulate, and you improve in your performance. And you worry less from that. So don't rush because you're trying to defeat your blood pressure. And 2, by slowing down, your performance will improve and the anxiety will decrease. So don't rush. And the experience improves for the spectators whenever you don't rush. Number 3, less is more. David hit it right. Having a smaller repertoire can be a very good thing. You can't do every trick in the book. You can't. You can't know them well enough to do it. I have run into so many professionals, particularly children's magicians, people that do children's magic shows, where they have a set and a routine that they've held on to for years, right? And they've of course they improve it and add more current elements to their program. They replace props and improve their performances that make them a little bit more relevant to audiences over time. But in general, they just kind of do the same set and they get very, very good at the same set. Less is more. Less to practice means that you practice it more, which means you know it better. You really just can't do everything. There's no sense in learning one trick, doing it, be done with it, and then go on to the next trick and never return to that. Get good at that one trick, right? Do fewer tricks for people in common environments. If you're not doing a show, first of all, if you are doing a show, you're doing the same show. Unless you have a series of acts that you do. And usually when you have that, it's only a few acts. You only have one show for this kind of group, one show for this kind of group, and one show for this kind of group. Those 3 shows, you know them really well. There's only a dozen or so tricks in each performance. It has all of the stuff in it that is not really filler, but there's audience interaction. You don't have to do a million tricks within the show, right? Keep your repertoire scope limited. This is true for people that perform in music as well. A lot of performers have a set of repertoire that they get really, really good at. They don't learn a piece and then discard it and move on to something else. And likewise, they don't stack up a repertoire that they can't maintain. I ran into a performer one time. He was the principal trumpet player in the Chicago Symphony Orchestra for many, many years. His name was Bud Herseth. I had a personal conversation with him one time before he passed. He was quite elderly when he stopped playing there, but he's in a lot of famous things. If you've ever watched the original Disney Fantasia, right, he's playing in there. He's on that. He was a principal trumpet player in the heyday of recordings that we hear of these classical compositions. And he said to me, I've never played what we know as trumpet players as the Hummel Trumpet Concerto. This is a concerto that junior high students start to learn, very good ones, right? He said he never played it. It's a staple. It's a staple. He never played it. Said he's never played it. He's never rehearsed it. He's never practiced it. He's familiar with it. He's worked with students in master classes that are working on it. He's given advice on it, but he himself had never put that into his repertoire. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to do any card magic. You don't have to do any coin magic. You can fixate on a tight repertoire, and that is good. It's not only is it good enough, but it's actually good because it means you'll do it really well. A lot of performers will only do the things they need to do their act, and they really don't venture too far beyond that. They focus, okay? 4, perform. Make sure that you're performing. Once you've practiced, once you have everything learned so that it's beyond second nature, it's actually boring to you to do it. It would take an act of God for you to mess it up. That's how well you know it, right? Once you're there, once you're comfortable enough with that material so that you can slow down and you can deliver it at an active, forward-moving pace, but a moderated pace, right? Once you're in a place where you have your repertoire fixated down to just the stuff you really know well, make sure you take that stuff, 1, 2, and 3, and you go do it. You don't have to do a lot. You don't have to do it with extreme regularity, but you should do it in impromptu situations, in situations that are less controlled for you, right? You should do it in front of a variety of types of spectators. Don't fear making a mistake. If you've done the first few things, you probably won't make very many mistakes. But if you do make a mistake, you just learn from it and be quick to brush that off. But make sure you perform. Do not let anything prohibit you from performing. Make sure that you're performing the material that you do. Start with people that are comfortable and then venture out from there. And each time you perform, you'll actually learn to practice new things. Performance is a vehicle by which you learn what to practice and what needs a greater focus. It'll even teach you that maybe you need to practice things you didn't think about. Maybe it's your scripting that needs practice. You will learn that very quickly by doing some performance. Number 5, the big one, don't worry. I have extreme anxiety in life in general, right? I'm a very worrisome, nervous person, but I actually am extremely nervous when I perform, even music, not magic itself, but even in music. I tend to try to engineer the stuff that I do perform in magic and in music to fit my temperament. If something gives me a great deal of anxiety, I don't worry about doing that particular thing. There's enough music and magic out there for me to do that I can be really comfortable with. One of the reasons I don't do knuckle busting sleights is that it's too worrisome. It's just much too worrisome for me. It's not worth it. I can't possibly enjoy doing that because of the concern that it creates. So I engineer my repertoire so that it is something that I can be more comfortable with. Two, I practice that stuff so that I can do it in my sleep. Right? Not literally, but figuratively. It's boring to me. I know that I'm going to manage it well. I can just go through the motions of it, not only physically, but with patter. And I know that it's going to come out the way that I intend it to, so that my anxiety can be down. I go slower and I try not to rush. I try to keep up a steady, brisk pace, right? I know it well enough to go bullet fast, but I try to pull myself back. I know it so well that I could go extremely fast, but I harness my energy and I go at a pace that I know I can be very articulate with, and I know that I can entertain at, and I can be clear and coherent with the spectators, right? And by doing those things, I don't have to worry. Within a few seconds or a minute at the most, I can start to kind of fall into a less anxious kind of situation where I can really enjoy the outcome. Here's something you should know. In those moments when you're anxious and you have worry, one thing that will come out in the end is not only will it go away as you perform, guaranteed every time, right? But when you get done, the delayed gratification from having completed something that was anxiety driven and gave you some worry, the gratification is just through the roof. It is through the roof. Whenever you tackle anxiety, when you tackle worry, when you go after it, when you get through to the end, when you've been successful and you accomplish that, the level of gratification that you get is really unmatched by anything that I can think of. Really in life, there's just so much pleasure that comes out of completing that task, having gone into it and hit your worry head on. So you should know that at the end, it's not that there's just a silver lining and that, oh, you'll be done and the anxiety will go away. You will be done and you will be so gratified and you will be so pleased. It really will energize you for the next opportunity that you have to perform, knowing what that feeling is like when you get to the end. It's a guarantee. It's a guarantee, especially if you've practiced, if you harness your energy, you don't rush, if you focus down your material, and if you make sure that you get out and you perform a little bit, right? This gratification will just grow and grow and grow. Last thing, be yourself. This one is a little interesting because I think there's a perspective from the great Danny Day Ortiz that I happen to agree with. I think it's actually impossible to do somebody else's trick as well as they do it unless you do it exactly like they do it. There is something about adopting personalities and mannerisms of people that you admire and people that speak to you in their performance, particularly if you're trying to do a genre of magic or any other kind of performance that fits the audience that they seek. I think you really do need to copy. I think you need to copy. The key, though, is that as you adopt, you need to be quick to adapt. Not only adapting your persona to fit the persona that you're trying to project, but also taking that persona that you're projecting and making it slowly your own. I think it's good to perform effects like other people have done them so that you can get the impact that they're getting. However, you cannot forsake your own personality. You're going to have to adapt a little bit of that so that it is still you, and you're going to have to adapt a little bit of you so that your part of that, and somewhere in the middle there's a mesh, and you end up creating a new performance persona that people can expect to see. I think there's nothing that throws off realism more, especially if you're a common magician and you perform for family and friends. Nothing can throw off your realism more than flipping a switch and becoming a different person. I don't think we're talking about that. I think that as you do a trick like someone else does it, verbatim, you still have to adapt enough so that it is you, and you need to go out as you, and you need to perform as you. You need, or at the very least, you need to slowly meld into the moment, right? You need to morph your personality into this for the moment that it needs to be that way. And then you need to have a game plan to come out of it. That can be very complex to think about, but it's something you need to consider. Yes, you need to be yourself, but you also cannot forsake the trick. And if a certain set of mannerisms make the trick work, you're going to have to adapt those mannerisms to yourself, and you're going to have to conform yourself to those mannerisms. And those are things to think about. But yes, you do need to be yourself. And especially over time, you will learn, working with the trick, how it becomes your own. You will start adding different nuances to it that will change the effect. The effect will change, but it may be improved. It may be heightened. In fact, it probably will be as it becomes more your own. So those are just a little bit of deeper things to think about related to number 6. And that is really a domino upon which all the others fall, right? You need to practice to be yourself. You need to restrain your energy to be yourself. You need to focus your material so you can be yourself. You've got to do material that fits your personality and your persona. Don't do every trick. Just because someone does a trick that's absolutely astounding doesn't mean you should be doing it. It may not really be possible for you to adapt into that scenario and do it as well as they do it. It just may not be possible for you in being yourself, and that's something to consider. Focus your material. The more you perform, the more you can be yourself. And the more you are yourself, the more willing you'll be to perform as well. And the more you are yourself, the less you will worry. And the less you worry, the more you can be yourself, right? All of these things interlock so much. So, one coin routine, that's my limits right there. And again, those of you that are connoisseurs of coin magic, you'll say it's not enough, or I should be investigating other things, or I should be doing it differently. Hey, I find that this is effective. I find the moves boring enough that I can do them consistently. I find that it is it's comprehensible to my or comprehensible to my audiences. I find that they can relate to me and the way that I do it and the limitations that I do it. And I find that the outs that I have and the type of coin magic that I do and the simplicity in which I do it keeps me from having high anxiety. It is a focused repertoire. It's not every move in the book. It's not the most complicated moves. And because of that, I want to perform. I want to perform it more, and I worry less, and I can be myself, and I can practice it, and I can harness my energy, all these things together, right? Really, really think about your repertoire and what you're doing when you consider these lists, this list of recommendations. So anyway, thanks, David. Thank you for touching on that. Hopefully this helps a little bit more with an additional perspective. Again, this channel relates exclusively to people that are building their repertoire and performing in common situations. This is for the common magician. And I felt it very necessary to evaluate this list and add a little bit more insight to it from my perspective. So good luck with that. Happy magicking.